So once again, I'm not going to talk about Android tonight. I'm going to talk about React Native and kind of my journey learning that new framework and coming from an Android developer background. So the agenda for tonight, I'm going to talk about a bit of context, like what is React Native, what was my first opinion about that, and a little about myself as well. Then I'm going to talk about what I didn't like about it, just so I can finish with like a positive note with what I liked about it. And then conclusion and some questions if you have. All right. So, about myself, probably you must have heard it already. I moved from France 7 years ago, and been an Android developer since then. Have been working for different kind of companies, Texture and Slack, and recently I've been building an app, an iOS and Android app for a rideshare platform called Reactor. And lately I'm building a React Native app. That's what I'm going to talk about tonight for a company called Bungalow. So what is React Native? So first of all, first question, who's saw me at the Android TO talk last year? Okay, so you guys can probably go grab a beer or something. This is not going to change too much. And who's used React Native here? Oh wow, okay, good. So you probably know most of this, but this is my journey. You probably probably the same if you come from an Android background as well. So it's a cross-platform framework built by Facebook. It's an extension of the React framework for the web development. It's written, you write in JavaScript, and the idea is that it generates native widgets. So you write some JS code, and then instead of writing HTML and stuff like that, it's actually writing, like, if you write a text, it's going to write a text view on Android and a UI label on iOS. So it's going to be real native widgets. So it's going to look like and feel like a real native app. It's being used by a lot of big companies like Facebook, Airbnb, not so much anymore, Uber, and others. Alibaba, I think, is using it. So my first initial opinion was like, oh, okay, cross-platform, that sounds like PhoneGap and Cordova and stuff like that. Yeah, okay, so it's hard to build a native app. It's a bit of a maze. It's kind of hard to maintain two apps. And then the idea of a cross-platform is going to be easy, but then you end up with a really low-quality product at the end. And so that was my idea of like React Native. I'm like, okay, it's cross-platform. It's going to be the same, like really bad experience for the user. So yeah, cross-platform, they're kind of ugly and they feel weird. So that was my first opinion. And then, yeah, JavaScript, really, like, we have Kotlin now, it's so much better. Come on. And I'm like, okay, well, React Native is getting really, really popular. And I was doing a lot of freelancing at the time, like last year. And I saw a lot of clients requesting it, because obviously for them it's, yeah, you're going to build two apps at once. So it's going to save time. I'm like, okay, so if I want to do more freelancing, maybe I should learn something new. I'm also like building this Reactor app in iOS and Android in native. And every single time I'm building the same screen, the same layout, the same button, the same for loop, and it's redundant and it's not really fun. So I know the pain of doing that. So I wanted to learn this solution for that problem. And I'm like, okay, well, it also could be good to add that to my skill set. It feels like a natural progression between like Android and Android iOS and now React Native. And so I decided last year in the summer to accept the contract with Bangladesh, who was really requiring React Native because they have mostly web developers there, so they wanted to have a code base that they might be able to reuse if I leave the company or if I stop the contract. So first, what I didn't like about React Native is that it's a really, really steep learning curve, and so you have to learn JavaScript. Last time I did JavaScript like 10 years ago, and now it's ES6 and has arrow functions and everything. It's completely new. So I had to learn that. I decided to use TypeScript because, come on, like non-type language in 2019, there's no way. So I used TypeScript, so I had to learn that. I had to learn the whole React framework, which is a completely different way of thinking app development, basically. I had to learn the specificity of React Native. It's React, but there's some differences there. I had to learn Redux, which is a state management. You can live without it, but it's much better. I had to learn NPM, we used to with like Gradle on Android, but it's completely different in the JS world. And a different ID, like I love Android Studio, I love IntelliJ and stuff like that, but apparently VS Code is the new thing for the JS community, so I wanted to use what everybody's using. I had to learn that as well. So basically, it's more like a cliff than a curve. So yeah, you have to climb, you have to climb for a little while, and then you can start like writing the first screen. You're not really productive the first few weeks. The other thing I didn't like is that you still need to know native. So I know Android, pretty good at it. iOS, not so much. Xcode is horrible, guys. Like, don't even try iOS. Or React Native. That's probably the only way. And you still need to know that because you need to like install plugins, like native plugins, so, like an image picker. You cannot do that with JS. You have to use the OS stuff. So you need a native plugin. So you need to install it in Xcode. So you need to know Cocoa codes and like all that stuff. And Xcode is again horrible. And also like I had to set up the build process to build different variants of the app, like staging, dev, and prod, for example, and it was a real pain. Again, the other thing is, it's JavaScript, not typed, come on. TypeScript adds typing, so it's a bit better, but it's not as good as Kotlin. You don't have like that amazing thing that's extensions. They have the optional, like nullable kind of thing, but you cannot chain it, so not like foo question mark dot bar question mark dot something. You have to do like, it's not good. And then you don't have CL class, which is pretty awesome in Kotlin. But it's not all terrible. There's really good things, and I think for me the first one is like hot reloads, like we talked about. Robin talked about instant run earlier, and it doesn't work, right? So at Slack we had I think 3-4 minute builds before I left, and just to change the padding, it's not fun. So the idea of React Native, it's all like hot reload. You just update your UI and it's right away, even within a second or less than a second, it's right there. So we have this famous comic, XKCD, and it happens all the time. And for me, that's the issue is that it's like 3 minutes, but okay, I'm gonna do something else during these 3 minutes. I'm gonna go to Slack, and then you get sucked in like in a conversation for like 15 minutes, so it's not 3 minutes in the end. So how it works, you just edit your stuff, and as you see, it's like not even a second. It's really fast. And it's not just UI, like you can add some logic and add API calls, and it's all right there. And it stays in the screen. That's the most amazing part, is you don't have to go through all the navigation and all the screens that you went through before, and you stay in the screen. So that's the first one. Second one is something called Storybook, and that's super powerful as well. It's like, think like, kind of like test, but for your eyes. Like it's very visual test cases and called stories. And you have all your components like that, and with all the different kind of states that they can have. So it can be like small components that you reuse everywhere, like this one, this button. But it can be like your screen, and then you can pass like the data, the fake data that you want, with all the different kind of states that you want. So it's really, really easy to build that. And with a combination of hot reload, like you write your UI and instantly, it's really, really fun. The other tool that I like is Reactor. Robin talked about Chuck. It's kind of the same. It's not in-app, so it's not like Chuck. You can take it to go. It's still like on the desktop, but it's really powerful. You have the network login, but also like console errors and everything. And you can also switch Storybook like between your app and Storybook within Reactor, so it's pretty cool. And the other thing that I really, really like is, well, that's actually the main point of doing cross-platform and React Native is that you can share the code. Like most of your app is going to be the same. So in the Bungalow app, very random number, but yeah, 99% of the code is shared. Yeah, everything is shared basically except some like little padding at the top because the status bar is different on Android or iOS or stuff like that. The only caveat is that you need the design to be on board with that idea of having the design the same on both apps. So our designer at Bungalow is very into like material design, which is good because it's going to be the same on iOS and Android. And obviously, it's also like you can still have the widgets that look the same, like a checkbox on Android and a switch on iOS and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. The other thing I like is the architecture. So I talked about the Redux, which is a unidirectional data flow, like MVI, like with those new frameworks like MVI, MVRX, and stuff like that. And the idea is that you have the UI, it's going to trigger actions, that's going to send the actions to the reducer, that's going to update the store, the states in the store, and it's going to update the UI. So it's only one way. You cannot like change the state from the UI. You have to go through actions, and then you can see exactly all the actions. I'm logging the actions in my crash report tool, so I know exactly what people did. I can go back in time to see what actions they triggered. And again, like Android, if you start a new project now, you're going to have the question like, should it MVVM, MVP, MVI, MV something? With React and Redux, it's like, no, this is the way, and it's everybody's using it, and you have plugins that can plug into that, and it's really, really powerful. Other little things that I liked, I really like the community behind React and React Native. So I mentioned like with Redux, it's plugins, like I'm using a plugin called Redux Persist, and it's basically persisting all my states, or part of my state that I say like just persist this and this in local local cache. I think on Android it's like a shared preference, and it's like persisting the JSON basically. On iOS, I forgot what it is, but you can use like Redux Persist, like Room, Redux Persist, SQLite. So you have different kind of plugin that you can use, and I just by integrating one dependency, one line in my dependencies, and adding like the configuration of the Redux Persist, it was offline support in like 5 minutes, basically. So it's really, really, really powerful. There's a lot of like good plugins, like I was talking about the image picker. We always have to do the same, like a button for importing from the gallery or from the camera, stuff like that. And there's one that's built by the community, and it's used by everyone basically, and it's amazing. It works by default on iOS and Android without any bugs. Pretty powerful. easy async stuff like promise and async wait. So I think we have the same cut-in with like coroutines, but it's not as simple. It doesn't work as well, I find, than with JS. Networking, like we use HTTP and retrofit, and yeah, it's cool. But like with React and JS, it's by default like JSON is JavaScript, so you don't have to have your like model mapping layer. It's all done by default. And the other cool thing is that now I know React, well, kind of. So I could be able to pitch in and help like the web team build the website. Yeah. So for conclusion, this is the home screen of the Bangla app. I'm actually redesigning it because we went through a rebrand, but yeah. I started, so I didn't really update this. I started like last summer, the only dev, so I'm building the iOS and Android app. In 4 months, I was able to do 5 features and 22 screens, and using it in real phone, even old phones, I don't see any performance issues so far. So I'm really, really impressed with React Native. As I told you, I was really skeptical about it, but I feel like if I had to build an app again from scratch, I would use that again. What's next for me, like to learn, I haven't really dived into animations. Apparently it's really, really easy as well. Testing, I've tried a little bit. I'm using something called Detox, which is doing Espresso on Android and Earl Grey, I think, on iOS. So UI testing framework. I want to try GraphQL and Apollo. Apparently it works really well with React, and it gives you like this offline support by default, and it's really, really cool. Apparently, Code Push is amazing. You can update your app without going through the stores. So like think about the last hotfix that you had to do, where like your screen is broken and you're losing millions of dollars in your app because people are not using the app anymore. You could update the app in a second instead of waiting for it. Well, on Android it's not. We don't have that problem, but on iOS you have to wait like a couple of days, years. Yeah, you have to wait a couple of years because it takes a couple of years to build an iOS app. No, a couple of days, and no, this is amazing. I want to learn more about that and try to implement that. And a little bit of kind of trolling myself, but yeah, like maybe learning Flutter next. I like to learn stuff, so. Jeff, where's Jeff? Hiding, yeah. He likes Flutter.
Flutter's good.
Yeah, Flutter's good.
Yeah.
So maybe try it out. If it was Kotlin, I would use Flutter, but it's Dart, you know.
Has types.
Yeah. Yeah. Optional chaining.
Not sure.
And then finally, like, if you guys, folks want to get started with React Native, you can go to the official doc. Is amazing. Like, I've never seen an official doc that actually is useful and well written and very progressive. Like, it starts with like the easy stuff, and then you can go like more advanced. So kudos to Facebook for that. There's also this React Native Express. Not sure who did that, but it's pretty cool. It's kind of a tutorial thing, like again, step by step. And personally, I did the Udemy course called the Complete React Native and Redux course. I think they always like have those promos, like instead of $500, it's $5 or something. So like you guys should try it out. It's pretty good. And that's it. Yes.
How do you handle deep links? If you need to handle deep links, what do you do?
That's
Simple. So in React Native, there's the navigation is not part of the framework, unlike Flutter, that has that by default. But there's two different ones. There's one called React Navigation, and one called React Native Navigation by Wix. I'm using the first one, which is apparently everybody's using that. And with that, you define like routes, a little bit like I think the new Android navigation stuff. Like you define very statically, declaratively your routes, and you can say, okay, this route is this path, this deep link, and I really didn't think it would work, and I just put my path in each screen, and all the deep links were working. Like I can define the scheme depending on like the build variant, and like they've thought about pretty much everything. Like the parameter, like you can say, oh, this like part of the path is a parameter, and it will transform into a parameter. So super easy. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds very interesting and probably something that is the holy grail of mobile apps. But I think that we all here are developers and we are always excited about building something, but when it comes to releasing the product, they have to deal with all these stores and all the keys and all that. The Android Studio and Xcode have some integration with that. How do you do it here? How do you end up publishing your app for customer test?
That's a very good question. I had to actually release the app 2 weeks ago, so yeah, I went through that process. So let me start with the one answer is, if you wanted to do React Native when you start, like the get started documentation from Facebook, there's two paths. There's one called Expo, and it's kind of like, I'm not sure how they do it, but you don't need to use Xcode and Android Studio with that, and then you can automatically like push to the stores with their platform. I don't know exactly how it works. I heard that it's easy for like prototyping and stuff like that, but then most of the time you have to eject, what they call it, eject, to go through like the native side of React Native, probably down the line. So I'm using React Native, Xcode, Android, and I set up Bitrise, CI/CD. Everything is set up like automatically, and I just give them my Apple Store Connect username, password. Yeah, hopefully nobody's gonna hack it. I was using. You're gonna hack it. I was using BuddyBell before, and then they got acquired by Apple, so I had to find something else. And Bitrise is it's a good alternative.
And second question: how well does it integrate with like somehow native services like Android location services? Does it have an interface for these kind of things that are kind of native for the platform?
Yeah, so the idea of React Native is you're going to write in JS, so you have your JS thread and everything like in the JS world, but then you have to bridge, there's a bridge between the JS world and the native world, and you can write native stuff, native modules yourself that you can call from JS, but most of the time I'm going to find like a library or plugin that does that. So there's definitely a location plugin for that. There's already like a VR plugin, there's an NLKit plugin, there's everything already. So
Thanks.
yeah.
Have you tried Kotlin JS with React?
So I haven't tried that. I heard about Kotlin. Is it called Kotlin Native?
No,
Kotlin
Kotlin
is-
JS. This is different.
Okay.
Because Kotlin Native is for doing native development.
Yeah.
But when you are doing Kotlin JS, it's like you are transpiling.
Oh,
You write
okay.
everything.
So it's like TypeScript,
yeah,
but with Kotlin.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, I'll try that. Probably very young and yeah. TypeScript is amazing because it's also built by Microsoft, which built VS Code. So it's all integrated, and Microsoft is not the Microsoft from 10 years ago, so it's good.
Another question.
Yeah.
Have you been in the point that you have to go to the native side? That you need to go native?
No, the only time I had to do that was for the splash screen because it's before React Native is loaded, so it has to be native. And again, like the plugins, like I installed Firebase, I installed the crash report, Instabug, like they all have already like React Native plugins. So I haven't had to write native code yet. Yep.
Since you started on your journey, Airbnb came out and said they're no longer using React Native.
Yeah.
They wrote a pretty long blog post about it. I was wondering if you had any thoughts about it.
From what I remember from the blog post, there was like 5
pages.
parts. Like it was a very long thing. It was mostly political, I think, and organization, like because I think they started to use React Native because they had a lot of JS developers and not enough native developers, and it was easy for them to onboard like web devs to work in the apps. And then they started to hire more Android and iOS, so they didn't need that anymore. I think, what's his name? The guy who wrote that blog post, Gabriel, was like, he really likes React Native, and he said it was not really for technical reasons or performance issues or anything. That it was mostly like political. And hiring, I think. They said that people thought that all Airbnb was 100% React Native, so it was hard for them to recruit native people, I think.
Yeah, if you don't want to read a 5-part article, the Fragmented podcast
Yeah.
has a 2-part
Yeah,
series
Gabriel.
where they just interview him and he talks about it.
Yeah. That's a good way.
Yeah.
Podcast.
One of the things he talked about too, mentioned, was it was highly political. He said the moment you start talking about a cross-platform solution
Yeah.
with mobile developers, you're going to get some pretty
my
people.
first opinion, like I said, vomiting emoji, like that was. I'm sure that was also the case at Airbnb. The first reaction is like, I think also it comes from like, as a native dev, you kind of scared, like you fear for your job security that there's a new framework and people are gonna steal your job. Yeah. So mostly political, I think. Yeah.
For the new widgets, do you need to wait for the framework update, or like how does it work?
For what?
For the new widgets, let's say chips for Android, how do you use it?
How quick does the bridge update from React Native to the native widgets?
I'm not sure about that. It's pretty active. Like the React Native team, like every other month, I think they have a new version. They probably bring in the new Android and new iOS stuff.
And from volume question. So if there's a widget that you want to use and they exist in Android, but the iOS platform doesn't have it, what happens? Like, can you use it? Or?
You can still use it, and you might be able to use it and have to write it yourself for the other platform that's missing that widget. I found that most of the time you can rebuild everything yourself. Like, I don't know, that chips is like that little tag thing. Yeah, it's like a view, like rounded corners. Like you can do it yourself. But you just need like view, text, image. Yeah, that's it. You can do everything with that. Yeah.
So besides the learning curve, what have been your big pain points you've experienced with doing React Native? Compared to like native solutions?
It's mostly, it's part of the learning curve. It's like the ecosystem behind all this. Like sometimes it's not working. I have no idea why. I have to restart the NPM server and all that. Yeah, it's a whole new ecosystem to learn, so it's tricky.
I really believe that it depends from your background. If you have a web background, it will be a little bit easier. But if you haven't, for sure, it will be.
How well do you know Node? NPM?
Sir?
How well do you know NPM?
Yeah, it's a whole ecosystem.
It's a nightmare.
I seriously think that coming from the native world to React Native is probably easier path than coming from web to React Native, because you have Android Studio again. Like how do you sign an iOS app, like provisioning and certificate? Like, yeah, it's a whole new world, and I think it's easier if you come from that world than if you come from the JS. So go ahead, guys, like try it out. It's easy. Yes.
like how familiar are you with other like competing frameworks like Flutter or with other cross-platform things? And do you think that React Native has longevity like Android and Swift code like will have because they're controlled by their own platforms?
It's a good question, and it's hard to answer. I think I'm pretty confident that it's gonna stay for a while because it's Facebook and they're using it heavily themselves. Like the whole marketplace part of the Facebook app is all React Native, so they cannot just say like, oh no, let's forget about React Native. Like they're still using it. So compared to Flutter, Jeff.
She's the one to ask. She's done both.
So
I've never used React Native.
Flutter, React Native.
I like Flutter better,
yeah,
but React Native is React. Like,
Give her a month and she'll put a talk on.
Yeah.
Next month she'll do a talk.
Right.
Me too. I'm really busy.
I think I see the appeal for Flutter because it feels like it's more integrated. Everything is there. Like, you don't have to use which navigation framework should I use? Like it's all in there. It seems like the idea is all integrated. You don't have to have those crazy.
Yeah. I kind of asked just because like the JavaScript ecosystem does such a change regularly. So.
Yeah. So when you create the first you have the React Native command line thing, and you say create project, and I think you have something like 50,000. Is it files or dependencies? Like it's crazy. Like the JS world is insane for that. They have tiny little dependencies that does just one line of code or something. Tons of those. Yeah. So it's scary. It's like, okay, so if that thing crashes or it's not maintained anymore, so what do you do? So I think Flutter is the appeal is that it's all Google and they're pushing for it, and there's maybe less of a community behind it, but maybe more stable. Yeah. Yes.
So I see that I guess you're the only dev working on it. So I assume that you're gonna have to build out a team. Would you have preference to hire the mobile developer or the web developer when you have to build your team?
Yeah, good question. Actually, that's another thing that I didn't update in my very recycled talk. We hired a new mobile guy 3 weeks ago, a month ago.
Yeah.
He's coming from iOS, so it was like perfect combination for me to have someone that knows that freaking Xcode again. And I think for me strategically, I would like to hire someone from the React or React Native background because there's still things that I could do better, I think. But that's the beauty of React Native. You can hire anyone from any background, basically. JS, native, it's easy to learn. And I'm hiring. If you're really good with React Native and can fix this crazy issue that I have right now.
Whoa, wait. Trouble in Paradise?
So yeah.
Where was that slide?
What's that?
What's that?
With Paradise?
You were commenting on some issue in React Native that seems to be difficult.
No,
Can you go
that's
into
just
detail?
a tiny little thing.
Oh.
Just I'm done. I'm really done. It's super easy, I'm sure.
Good save.
Yeah.
There are two ways to write a cross-platform application, right? You can share the business logic or you can share the UI part.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about those? What's the best approach?
So that's I don't know, I've heard that they stopped doing that, but that's 2 years ago when I was there, they were trying to have a C++ library that was sharing the model, the API call, the persistent layer, and I don't know if it was because it was C++ and it was hard to hire, it was super clunky. So I see the appeal, having the logic shared, but it always comes from the UI. If the UI is not shared, then it's even better if you can share the UI. That's my opinion. Yeah.
So it sounds like you're using a lot of plugins and a lot of libraries, which is fantastic. There's an ecosystem around it. Do you ever find yourself unable to hit certain designs that designers are providing you because you are shackled to the libraries? Like, let's say a date picker. You would have to use a library for that, and they're both implemented entirely independent on both platforms.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to change that for whatever reason, you would end up having to rewrite the entire library, and therefore you're at the mercy of the library.
So I've seen that issue with, it was not a date picker, it was a regular like drop-down list, and the library was really ugly and not really customizable, and I ended up writing my own. The other side of the coin is like I used a chat library called Gifted Chat, and everything is customizable, everything is stylable, and I was able to build, I don't have the screenshot here, but I was able to build like a chat feature in like a week. You have avatars, you have the date, you have the loading more, you have the input at the bottom, and everything is customizable, everything is stylable. And I think the idea is if it's coming from the repo of React Native community, and if they have like more than 500 stars, then probably good to go. Like, and most of them, like this Gifted Chat has 10,000 stars on GitHub. And so you know it's going to be good, and you see like you can customize everything.
Would you say that you use a lot of libraries throughout the experience?
Yeah, they put me on this app that is now being used by a few thousand residents, and I'm the only developer. I cannot afford writing everything my own, so I'm super like into reusing whatever you can reuse. Yeah.
The APK size have like an impact that you are using React Native?
It's very small, I think. It's like 4 or 5 meg.
Additional to whatever you are doing.
Sorry?
For instance, if you have like a hello world in React Native.
Yeah, I think that's 4 or 5 meg.
And okay.
Yeah, it's not much.
So like, since you gave your talk in November at Android TO,
Yes.
has your opinion changed? Has anything really changed significantly since then in the months that you've been working on this in React Native?
Not really. I would do another React Native project any day, I think. I still see, and it's even worse now that I have another dev with me. I think I need to get used to that, but like sometimes like changing branch or going from master and there's a new dependency, I always forget to like npm install, and you have to restart everything, and sometimes like I really have to restart the machine to make it work. And yeah, there's some crazy stuff that I still don't fully understand. The hot reload is amazing, but sometimes it doesn't work.
Oh.
It's still better than instant run, and it's probably going to be better than apply changes. Apply changes, really? Nah.
Another unrelated question.
Yes.
Are the promises in async as good as Kotlin coroutines or like threading in Java? Like, what's the difference? Is there a difference?
I've never used coroutine. I haven't used it yet. It's as simple as saying that this method.
What I mean is like, if you're natively there's no bridge. So if all of a sudden you're introducing this bridge, and then in the bridge you're like creating threading in JavaScript, like is there any?
So it's not real threading. I don't think
for real?
Because it's only one thread. It's only one.
Yeah.
Actually, 3 threads. It's like a UI thread. It's like the React thread is like computing all the changes, and the bridge thread or something.
So do you have to worry about threading like you would with Android? Like if you
I don't
hook
know how
into
it
a
works.
lifecycle, and then you're doing some computing in there, do you have to like background thread that, or like does it introduce change?
It's like I think it's like coroutine. It's the same thread, but it's asynchronous.
Okay.
If that makes sense. I don't know if you've used React Native. How do you
That
describe
sounds
it?
right.
We were talking about this today, and I was just like, maybe Simon knows.
It just works, man. Just forget about it. What would you want to know? Let it be. Let
Just
it
say
work.
sync away, whatever, man.
Yeah, sync away. It's kind of like coroutine, I think. But you can use RxJS. You can use Promise, which is kind of like. Is there the equivalent on Android like Future or? Yeah, something like that. So if you don't like async wait, you can use other stuff, like callbacks.
I mean, React Native hasn't hit 1.0 yet. So that said, how much has there been a lot of changes in the API, or is the API sort of starting to get a little more mature or whatever? Or?
Yeah, I've seen that. I think when I released 0.58 a few weeks ago. Yeah, no, it's. But yeah, you know, Gmail was beta for like 5 years or something. So
Yeah.
what beta does what does that mean?
I think
Still-
over and above version numbers, are they releasing updates that are literally breaking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's breaking changes.
So is
I
that
mean,
so
Swift is 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's breaking changes every time.
So the updates are no longer breaking?
It's breaking still, yeah.
Oh,
So and what I found is that actually the best I've heard that the best way is to always have the last version minus one. So you let people try it out and break their stuff, and then it's gonna be fixed the next one, and then you always like one late basically.
So React Native doesn't deprecate, it just breaks. Is that the way they
It deprecates stuff, but
Yeah.
most of the time it breaks. Yeah, you have now there's a new point 59 that was released yesterday, I think, or a few days ago. Released a upgrade path, so it's just a command line and it's going to update the stuff that should be updated and probably not work. I don't know. It's hard. Like upgrades are hard. Like it's the same with Swift. Like we're not used to that on Android. Like Google is really good at deprecating for like 5 years, and then you have time in 5 years to change the stuff. But it's not the same in iOS and React Native.
There's no like app compat kind of thing, I guess, implemented yet for React Native.
No.
Yeah.
All right. Those are the questions.